Hi there and welcome to another Raid Shadow Legends video. I'm IceMan and today we are going to be doing a slightly different video than what I usually do. We are doing a Defense Demons video. Why have I called it a Defense Demons video? Well, we may do some gameplay, we may not. We'll see how the time ticks along. Basically, I'm going to take you through all the factions and we're going to look at defensive champions that are good in the game. There are other defense champions in the game. Some are not as good, so I've left them out of this list. I've tried to really just do ones that are decent in each faction that will benefit you basically. Why defense champions so good, you ask? Well, you might not, because you probably already know, but if you're new to the game, if you don't know, defensive based champions do their damage primarily off of defense. Defense is also one of their highest stats, so when you're building up their defense, you're making them more tanky, harder to kill, and at the same time boosting their damage. So these champions can really help you power through places that squishier champions just die effectively, and that's what makes them so good. So who are some of these champions? Well, I'm going to take you through some of the ones that I've got on my account that I think are really great first, and then we're going to start going through the factions and pick out some more to have a look at. So we are going to start off with a champion in the Lizardman faction who you actually get free in this game once you manage to fuse him with collecting all those champions that you need to collect. None other than Raz and Scarhide. I've done a guide on him. I've done a guide on many of these champions, to be fair. So if any of them you find interesting, go take a look at my video list, and more than likely you'll find a guide video for that champion if you're interested. This guy is absolutely amazing. He's for a long time been a staple in my clan boss team. These days I only tend to use him on magic affinity boss as opposed to all the time, just purely because I prefer to have the extra poisoner in there, and I've got a poisoner that does decrease defense and weaken, same as he does, so that's the only reason, to be fair. But it doesn't negate that this guy is absolutely brilliant. I don't use him so much outside of faction wars anymore, to be fair, myself, other than, like I say, blue affinity clan boss, but he is a solid champion, good damage dealer, good in the arena, great in faction wars, amazing in faction wars. He'll do you really solid in faction rooms, just like they all do. So we'll have a quick look at his abilities. His A1 attacks 3 times, so he's great for the Fire Knight. He's the right affinity for the Fire Knight as well. Has a 20% chance of removing 1 random buff from the target with these hits, so that's pretty cool. It's a shame it's not sort of 1 random buff from each hit, but you know. Now this is his big money ability as far as I'm concerned. This is a 2 sheer, attacks 1 enemy and has a 100% chance when booked out of placing a 60% decrease but I'll learn to talk rather than making weird baby noises at you. I don't know. So yeah, he places a 60% decrease defense debuff and a 25% weaken debuff for 2 turns. This can be booked down to a 3-turn cooldown as well, so that's really solid. Decreased defense and weaken in one thing. The only thing is, it is only a single target hit, which is why it's great for places like the Spider. He works quite well because he can come in and be your off affinity tank, and you only need the one who really needs to decrease defense and weaken is the Spider Queen herself, not the Spiderling so much. So he's solid there. And also clan boss, again, you've only got the 1 enemy to hit, so again he comes in, he does that there, and yeah, he does some good solid damage as well when built out. His A3 attacks all enemies and decreases the turn meter by 100%. This is a really solid ability, again, helps him in Fire Knight, helps him in Spider, and helps him in the arena, so yeah, and everywhere else, to be fair, except for maybe the clan boss, which they've now also fixed so that he doesn't even use it on the clan boss. So again, no, he's even better than he used to be fair. And next up we have one of the new champions to the game, when I can find him, Mr. Iambrago. Absolutely amazing looking champion, very cool, very fun. I will be doing a guide on this gentleman very soon. I've got him built out, nearly finished off. I just need to finish off farming scrolls for his masteries, and then he'll be ready to go. But he's still a solid champion even without that, to be fair. So his A1 attacks one enemy, has a 20% chance of decreasing the duration of all buffs by 1 turn. So that's pretty solid. It's only one enemy, but you know. His A2, this is a really solid ability. He places a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 3 turns, and this can be booked down to a 3-turn cooldown. So effectively, you've got increased defense up all the time. So you can imagine how much that helps keep champions alive. Not to mention if you're using defensive champions like himself. And that was the other thing I forgot to mention at the start. So these defensive champions, they're not like attack champions where you give them an increased attack, they do more damage. These guys, you give them an increased defense, they do more damage and take less damage as well. So again, whereas the increased attack champions, they're squishy, they do more damage when they get an increased attack, but that's it, they do more damage. These guys, they do more damage and take less damage, so you know, it's a win-win situation. Do the attack champions tend to do, who are really built to nuke, do more damage? Yes, but then again, like we said, they're also easier to kill, so it's a trade-off. So he does all that, and then has a 75% chance, again 100 when booked, of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. Has a 75% chance, again 100 when booked, of placing a stun debuff for 2 turns if the target is under 2 or more buffs. So stun for 1 or 2 turns, depending on whether or not they're under buffs. Absolutely brilliant, can't go wrong. Then Battlestorm is A3, attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing a provoked debuff for 1 turn. Also places a 50% decrease attack debuff on all enemies for 2 turns if he's under the increased defense buff, which, to be fair, unless it's been removed, he should be if you've booked him out, and he is well worth the books. I'd say he does take a lot, but he is really worth it. You get that A2 down, so that you've constantly got this increased defense up. You get that decreased defense up with the A3. So yeah, it synergizes really nicely, and it's really cool. Yeah. Then we've got his passive, which is the big money bit for him in a way. Increases the defense of all allies by 10% of this champion's defense. So you build him out with as much defense as you can. All your champions across the board, especially if you're already using defense champions with him, take a big defense boost, which is going to help them do more damage as well as take less damage, which is going to be a motif all the way through this video, so you'll probably get sick of me saying it. But yeah, so absolutely amazing new defensive champion, really love him, and you can't go wrong there. So next up, we're going to be moving to the Barbarians. 2 champions. We've got another free-to-play friendly champion here. Now, I will say that to a degree, the defensive champions are a bit legendary heavy, but there are actually a couple of worth mentioning rares in this list, and a few decent epics as well. So you know, it's not all legendaries, but unfortunately there are a lot of them. Syl here, however, is a login reward for X amount of days, so you get her for free, and she is, in my mind, one of the best champions in the game for 2 reasons. A, because she's a reviver. B, because she looks hot as hell, really cool, really sexy. So you wouldn't mind if my wife looked that way, I have to say. Maybe with a little less metal, that could get a bit pokey and sharp and whatnot, but you know. Anyway, really cool champ, brings stuns, heals you, and revives you. So you know, absolutely amazing. And she pairs really well with many a team, to be fair, because of that. I do wish that Revive was maybe 2 people or 3, or even a whole team, but to be fair, if it was a whole team, she'd probably be totally broken, and you wouldn't ever need another Reviver again. So I mean, she is an amazing champion as is, so it doesn't really matter. So as we said, you know, oh yeah, 30% decreased speed for 2 turns on her A1 as well. I forgot that. AoE stun. It's not a huge percent chance, but it's still, and it hits twice. So you basically, and you can book that up by another 15. So what, 25, 45% chance of hitting a stun out of 2 hits. So she stuns a fair amount of the time, and I personally stick her in a stun set, and then she stuns even more. So, you know, really solid. She's got a passive that heals allies by 10% of their max HP at the start of each turn, and places an increased speed buff on a random ally for 2 turns. It's a shame that one. I don't think it'd make her broken to have made that increased speed on all allies for 2 turns. I think that would have been pretty solid actually. But yeah, definitely one of my favourites in this list. Next up, we're staying in the Barbarians, and we're taking a look at one of the game's most wanted champions. Another amazing looking champion. Sleek, sexy, powerful. Absolutely amazing job with the aesthetics and the artwork. You know, you can't go wrong. Here we have Valkyrie. One of my first, if not my first, legendary port in the game. Along with Septimus, and she is an absolute beast. She will do it all for you. She'll keep you alive, help you progress. She can be used in Doom Tower, Arena, Clan Boss. Not so much a Clan Boss on killable teams, which is the only reason I don't use her as much as I used to. But yeah, still one of the top champions in the game. She's got decreased turn meter by 10% on each hit. If enemies have buffs on her A1. Her A2 attacks all enemies, places a shield buff on all allies for 3 turns and a counter attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. The value of the shield and the damage inflicted are proportional to this champion's defense. You build her out with massive defense, and she gets an even bigger shield and does more damage. You pair her with somebody like Iambrago, you can see the synergy. She's going to get a bigger shield, she's going to do more damage. It works really well. Again, she's a tank. It takes, she does some decent, solid damage, but it takes a lot to take her down. I didn't mean to click off her there. A passive, Jealousy. This champion's turn meter will be increased by 10% each time an enemy champion places a buff. Enemy champions will have their turn meters decreased by 10% for each buff they receive. So every single time, and this is on no cooldown or anything, every single time your enemy is putting buffs on themselves, they're increasing her turn meter by 10, decreasing their own by 10. That is huge, absolutely huge, and really clutching the arena, and can actually mean the difference between you going first and not going first, more often than not, because you know, your enemies come in, they what's the first thing they do? They place debuffs on yourself, place a load of buffs on themselves, more often than not. At which point, all of a sudden, their turn meters all drop through the floor, and you get to go next, which is absolutely brilliant. She then also brings an increased allied defense in faction crypts by 33%. If you're not using her in faction wars, there's probably something very wrong with you, if you have her. Next up, we are moving over to one of the new champions in the game, and we are going back to the Orc faction. I maybe should have done him while we were here, to be fair. We have Duke the Pierced, or Duck the Pierced. I can never work it out, and I'm going to worry about this one every time I say it. This guy has an entire skeleton, or most of a skeleton, strapped to his shield, blindfolded so he can't see the hits coming at him, which I think is at least nice and friendly, and you know, shows that he cares and he doesn't want to scare the poor skeleton. So yeah, absolutely amazing champion. I've also done a guide on this chap recently. Brilliant new addition to the game. I absolutely love this guy, both his artwork and how he works in the game, and I have to say, one of my favourite new champions. I've now kind of stopped using Stag Knight because of this guy. He's just amazing, except for places where obviously you're against force, and then there's no point in using him, and I can use Stag Knight then. But to be fair, I also have other champions like Abbas that I can use in those circumstances. So he's defensive, so obviously he has a good health. He's not one of the highest defense pools in the game, but he has a good solid defense, so he's easier to keep alive whilst giving you the decreased defense and all that he does. His A1 attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 30% chance of placing a 50% decreased accuracy debuff for 2 turns. This is really huge in the Doom Tower, with all those bosses and enemies having masses of accuracy, and you're needing to sort of build so much resistance to stop them hitting you, and this guy can come in and decrease their accuracy and effectively help keep you alive and stop them from doing stuff to you. So really cool. Is at A2, attacks all enemies, has 75% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. Also has a 75% chance, this is 100 by the way when booked, and on a 3-turn cooldown, chance of placing decreased defense debuff for 2 turns on each critical hit. So yes, you do need to build him out for crit, but the thing is with him, I think that you don't have to build him out for accuracy, at least not for that move. You probably would need to for this one. So you're still probably going to build him out with accuracy, to be fair, and also this one. But still, he's an absolutely amazing champion. I kind of wish they'd just left this bit off, actually. You didn't really need it, because you're going to be building him out with accuracy anyway. So the clarification is kind of pointless. It just means that you can't have him at less than 100% grip. Otherwise, you're more likely to not place your buff. On his A3, places a provoke debuff for 1 turn on target enemy. Also has a 75% chance of placing a provoke debuff on 2 random enemies. So effectively, he's got a pretty solid chance of placing provoke on 3 enemies on his A3. He also places a reflect damage and unkillable buff on himself 1 turn. The reflect damage, sorry, is for 2 turns. This can be booked down to 4 turns, so really solid. He also has an increased allied defense in faction crypts by 31%. Totally amazing champion. Next up, we're moving over to the Demon Spawn faction. And where is she? Ah, there she is. She's Void. Umbral Enchantress. Another amazing champion. Another one I've done a guide on, to be fair. I've actually, like I say, I've done guides on most of the champions in the early part of this list, because they're all champions I have. And she does some good solid damage. Great arena champion, although she's great in waves and dungeons and stuff too. She's Void, so she doesn't get weak hits. She's not particularly weak or strong anywhere, so that's really good. Her damage on her A1 increases as her current HP decreases, which it naturally does due to the way she's designed. Her A2 attacks all enemies, so you've got a solid AoE, has an 80% chance of placing a block buffs debuff for 3 turns. That's huge, you know, it just means that the enemy can't buff themselves, and it hits pretty hard too. Again, this can be booked out to 100%, and it's on a 3-turn cooldown. Her A3, this is a big money ability. Undying Evil attacks all enemies, has an 80% chance, again 100 when booked, of placing a provoke debuff for 2 turns. Places an unkillable buff on this champion for 2 turns, and places a block cooldown skills debuff on this champion for 5 turns. The block cooldown skills debuff cannot be resisted or blocked and cannot be removed. Absolutely amazing champion. At the moment, this bit is not actually true. As far as I'm aware, a cleanser can remove her debuff. Certainly when I did my guide on it, and I believe I've seen a more recent video where somebody said the same thing. So, you know, you can bring in a cleanser and remove that, and then she gets her abilities back, which is great. So, really solid champion, hits very hard, provokes all the enemy team. They can't do any damage to the rest of your team, and the rest of your team are just smacking them and smacking them and smacking them. The nice thing with her is you pair her with somebody like one of the counter-attack champions. I'll get there in the end. She takes a hit, she then goes back and hits them, and like I say, she hits pretty hard, so that works quite well. Really cool champion, really enjoy her. Again, I don't use her so much anymore. I've sort of moved past her with my squads. I think I still use her in 3v3, so you know, really solid there, and I definitely use her in faction wars. Again, really solid there. Okay, so we're actually going to call it at this point. I've got a whole load more champions to go through. This video wound out being very, very long, over an hour, and obviously nobody wants to watch that. So what we're going to do is, we've just done the champions that I've got on my account, and now we're going to go look at champions from pretty much every faction bar maybe one, because they didn't have one. Not that I thought was good enough anyway. That fills this role for defense demons, and so yeah, basically we're going to leave it there. I hope you enjoyed this video so far. If you did, please hit that like button, please hit that subscribe button to get notified of more future content, and I hope you enjoy the next video, which will be coming out a day or two after this one probably. So just watching, bye.